Hey everyone, welcome Azure Cosmos DB Live TV. Mark Brown, welcome. Episode 60. Got with us this week, Paul DeCarlo. Sorry, I just had a sip of coffee and it went down the wrong pipe right before we came on the air. So sorry if I cough a bit. Paul, how are you? Good to see you again.
I'm doing just great. It's actually like the first start of cool weather down here in Houston, which we have not felt, which is just nice. So I'm having a beautiful sunny day over here, and just really excited to be here, chatting about the content that we're going to be presenting here on this episode.
Yeah, that's great. Here in Los Angeles area, it's still hot and dry and whatever. About ready to go on fire. Anyway, I wanted to bring you on. Paul, you're with the Cloud Developer Advocacy team. We've had other folks on from that team. We had Mark Heckler on not too long ago. I've had other folks on in the past as well from that team. You guys do some great stuff. And I wanted to bring you on because I learned about something you guys did last July in New York at the reactor there. So people that are familiar with Microsoft and our community efforts, you would know about our reactors that we've got all over practically. And so we host events at these things and do cool community interactions and stuff. And you guys did some really interesting stuff that really kind of caught my eye. I mean, obviously, we're kind of coming out of COVID. There's obviously been a lot of data and a lot of talk about data that was generated as part of COVID, from studying the disease to things like what you guys did, which was studying kind of behavioral patterns for people and looking at what did people do kind of before and after, let's say in like New York and then London as a result of this. And I thought it was fascinating, and I know you guys used Cosmos as part of this solution you guys built as part of this hackathon that you guys created for this event in New York. So I wanted to bring you on just to tell the viewers kind of what you guys did, how it was built, and kind of what you learned, and just kind of share the story with that with our viewers, if you would.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. There's really a lot of different ways we could talk about this. Number one, this was like the first in-person event that we had ran in, who knows? There was that long period during COVID where I guess like folks didn't really, get out much.
Yeah.
And we saw like at the beginning of this fiscal, one of our professor friends from the University of Oxford, Professor Ajit Jakar, reached out, mentioned he was going to be in New York City, and had this idea on, what if we looked at data sets pertaining to large cities? So in this case, he was sort of bringing the London aspect and coming to New York and inviting folks from New York to bring that New York aspect and say, what are the ways that we can look at data in open data sets to discover correlations and things like that that can explain changes that occurred as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic? And what we did in order to accomplish this was we packed a whole bunch of folks into that reactor space in New York, folks that were, some of them tuning in live from London, distributing some of the work that they had done previously to give examples on how to do this analysis, and also worked in partnership with a company called Observable HQ, who does a lot of graph visualization tools and things like that can work inside of Teams. It's actually a really cool product. So we had a bunch of specialists there, but also the Cosmos DB team was there. Believe it or not, Jay Gordon was present there. So Gall was also present. Yeah, so it was really awesome. We had, how can I say, some of the best in terms of tech support and brains to tackle a problem like this. And so what ended up getting produced as a result from this, we had quite a few things. I mean, Observable sort of came with their own data analysis where they looked at various different things, 31 different categories of looking at the data, understanding things like MTA ridership for the New York subway systems and things like that, as plotted against COVID-19 case rates and things like that. We also had the winner of the hackathon actually looked at, and I want to be clear here, there was no actual like rules here. We weren't saying like you have to do this or do that.
So I want to just clarify for folks. I mean, this isn't something where you guys went and spent a bunch of weeks beforehand, like building something out and throwing it in the GitHub repo and then just replaying it for a bunch of people sitting in the New York reactor. This is true hackathon, which is, hey, here's, go get some data, or maybe here's some data sets. Go make a hypothesis, ask a question, and then go figure it out. Is that kind of how these things work?
That's 100%. And going even further, we weren't even, we had suggestions for tools that folks could use, but there was no limitations there, which was interesting because we learned a lot from our communities that, there's certain tools that they sort of prefer to use. And also being able to generate feedback on some of the tools we use here at Microsoft. And in some cases, very favorable, like, whoa, I didn't know I could do this, right? Like things like that. And so the results that were created here, and you can actually look at one of these. We've got a link up for this, the aka.ms/data workshop will walk you through what we've done. And also this Data AI Hackathon winner post will actually show you the analysis done by Miles Judd Porter, who won the hackathon. And this was interesting. I mean, this guy, like you said, comes here with this hypothesis of he liked riding bikes, and he had just gone on a trip to London, coincidentally, lives in New York, and he was renting bikes while he was over there. And he came over here, and apparently he rents a bike every day to ride to his university. So he knew this problem pretty well, and goes forth and utilizing some of the tools for creating Jupyter notebooks in Azure, developed his own analysis here, which I'm not going to go into details here. It's not the full point here, but really generated a bunch of different theories and hypotheses and was able to more or less prove them with data in his analysis. And you can just kind of see, like you said, no preparation, but the results that we're getting from this are like, you could say academic grade, scientific quality in terms of looking at data.
Could you share, is there an insight from his thing you could share that was interesting? I think viewers might find that kind of cool, just to see, like, there's something that he kind of surfaced through this data. I don't know if it's riding bikes. I don't know. Is it the chance of getting hit by a bus? I guess during COVID.
One of the interesting
in London streets. Yeah.
One of the interesting things I think that we pulled out here was, believe it or not, the bike ridership actually sort of increased with COVID-19 case count. So you're seeing that plotted against here. So believe it or not, there were more people riding bikes, probably because that was the way to get around. Or if you're in a big city, it's you weren't calling the cabs.
Makes total sense. Who wants to cram themselves into a London tube when there's a chance you might die? Right. So it makes sense to kind of reduce your risk.
That's the one right there. Yeah.
On a bike. I would do the same thing. So that's cool.
So for how this related to Cosmos DB is, of course, we had the Cosmos DB team there. In addition, we had Jasmine Greenaway, who's one of my colleagues, who happened to be familiar with this workflow that even myself, I was not familiar with when I showed up there, which was, we would like to perform an analysis, and I know we can get there. We're going to store data at some point in the Cosmos DB, but we want to visualize that at the end of the day using PowerBI. What's awesome about this entire walkthrough or workflow, if you want to call it that, is documented on the Cosmos DB blog and serves as kind of a couple things here. One, it shows how you can do this. So if you head to the AKA-MS Azure Data Workshop, that will walk you through this. You could more or less be a part of what we did. It also serves as kind of a tutorial for getting started, because when we did this event, we actually didn't have a pre-canned analysis. We went there with nothing and walked away with something. And what's awesome about this is, if you think about it, if somebody wanted to run this hackathon again, which we do plan on doing in November, and we'll talk about that as we go through the live stream, you could get started with this workflow. We show you how to actually plot the COVID case count data, and you'll get to see the 2 spike curves that occurred there. And that's really all you need to begin correlation analysis if you want to do this from a visual standpoint. And what I find that's exciting here is as we walk through this workflow, we discovered you're going to learn a lot about how to work with data in the cloud in general, like in a way this isn't just like, upload CSV from here, then click a few things, load into a tool, drag and drop, and you're off to the races. We're talking about how you could handle technically petabytes of data, leveraging some of the cloud scale tools, albeit pointing it at a small data set in comparison. If you look at COVID case count data.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty fascinating. I mean, I guess you could, once you've got COVID data, case data, and then dates, of course, for that stuff. Anything else you can get that's got a date, you can essentially correlate at least on a timeline. And there you go, right? So, And if you have other things like location data for where things are happening, you know, like a lat long or long lat, as they as they tend to express that, you could correlate location and time for these things, right? So most data sets tend to have these sorts of things with them. So yeah, this is really cool. I love just the idea, the concept of like, hey, here's a bunch of data. You go at it and see what could you what questions could you answer or ask and then answer using the tools you have or tools we give you, and go at it. So very cool concept. I love this a lot, actually.
Yeah, and that's the light bulb moment, Mark, was the wait, if I have two data sets that have timestamp data that overlap, then we probably can derive something from that. And
Maybe.
there's obviously even more advanced ways to perform, anomaly detection analysis and things like that. But where we'll show you in terms of what we did here was basically loading that data into Cosmos DB via route of Azure Blob Storage. And this is interesting because we actually have a full service ETL transformation tool where you can go from different data stores in Azure between each other. While it's kind of like overkill for this data set, it's still like the learning concept, I think, that sticks out here is like, wait, you're telling me like without having to understand any sort of conversions, we have a tool that can just bring data from one place to the next? Yes, which the story that should be telling you is if you have data somewhere and you want to bring that into Cosmos, Azure Data Factory, as you're going to see, is your ticket to get that data from one place to the next. And then the next thing we'll show off, which I think is just absolutely fascinating and doesn't just stop where we're showing it, is Synapse Link, which is basically a feature that when you can enable allows you to perform basically real-time queries against data stores. That can even be something like Cosmos DB, and then allows you to pull that into various other tools. So you could do something like bring this into Power BI and have a live updating dashboard of data that's coming into a Cosmos DB instance. And it doesn't stop there. Synapse Link, just for folks who aren't familiar with, can also even allow you to leverage artificial intelligence as a service, depending on the data that you have stored in your data store, to start performing analysis on image data, text data, really anything, detecting anomalies for you automatically. It's really a fascinating feature and something that I can't wait to show off here in just a few moments.
Yeah, thanks for saying or giving a plug for Synapse Link. It really is kind of I would say almost kind of like a superpower. When you think about what it can do to your data in Cosmos. Not many people know about it. We've had it out for a couple of years, but kind of the kind of the 30-second pitch is being able to do near real-time analytics on data sitting in Cosmos. So we've seen customers use it for doing like real-time product recommendations or running it and doing AI or ML, or just straight up reporting. But once you get it into Synapse and you've got basically a zero ETL and zero friction way of getting your data in there, you basically just turn it on and it just sucks data in as it comes into Cosmos. There's nothing, you don't do anything. And then you can start, once you're in Synapse, the whole universe of what Synapse gives you, machine learning, reporting, all that stuff is all right there at your fingertips. So yeah, there you go. You got the page up. And
yes, just absolutely. Yeah, fantastic. Like you look at this and it's like it's almost all, it may be all of the cognitive services APIs, OCR, recognize text, read image, analyze image, tag image, describe image. Like this is just fascinating stuff that you can perform at scale. You can also perform in real time as that data comes into your data store.
Yeah, and by the way, that stuff all talks JSON. So if you need to persist it back out, just plug it right back into Cosmos. And then you use Cosmos as the serving layer.
Just like that. It's beautiful.
Right? And now Cosmos is your serving. Not only is it the ingest point for your raw data, it's also now you can use it for serving after you've run it through these engines. So yeah.
So I'd like to walk through that data, I guess this workflow, if you will.
Yeah.
And as we're going through this, I do want folks to pay attention to this. Is really more for the showcasing of how we can operationalize cloud scale data using these services in conjunction with each other. It's certainly overkill for this problem. We could probably simply load a data set into Power BI. So folks are going to probably be mentioning that. But that's not the point. The point here is that we want to leverage these tools for the very purposes of sometimes there's more than meets the eye. For example, all this stuff in Synapse Link. I bet many of you, maybe you did, and let us know if you did know. If you knew that Synapse Link could do AI operations at scale on your data, let us know. And if you're using that today, we'd love to know how. So getting started, the first thing we would do is we want to look for open source data sets. And the great thing is data.gov has this wonderful CSV file that has the current COVID-19 case counts, hospitalization, and death data, which is pretty interesting that you can just get this without any sort of, you don't need clearance for this. You can pull this data down. And once we're able to plot this, which is what we're going to essentially showcase today in our workflow, that leads us to the final piece, which is I just need, as Mark mentioned, another timestamp data set that I can plot against that. And we can start to make some sort of correlations and start to validate hypotheses from that point. So I'm going to get started. I'm going to hop into my Azure instance here. I've already created myself a resource group here for the Azure Cosmos DB live stream. We're going to start creating some resources. And the first one I'm going to do here, for the purposes of demonstrating some of this cool ETL features that we get with ability to pull, pull data from Azure storage into Cosmos DB. We're going to go ahead and show some of that off. So I'm going to start by creating a quick storage account. Nothing super exciting about this, but you should be amazed at how fast we're able to do this.
There is definitely nothing exciting about watching storage accounts being provisioned, Paul. I'll just agree with you right there.
Well, we don't have to do this, but I want to show people just how fast we get started from this. And so I'm going to name this ACDB storage, and we'll throw this in the East US. Great spot to put it.
Yeah. It's always a joke with me because I'm the control plane guy for Cosmos, so I always make a joke like, I'm going to do demos of provisioning Cosmos accounts, and you're all going to be enthralled with watching that happen. So exciting edge of your seat demo right there, watching the thing. So sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to actually go ahead and provision a Cosmos instance as well here within this same resource group, because we need somewhere to put this. And this is one of those other interesting takeaways here is like, what I love about the cloud, and everybody knows this probably, maybe not all our viewers, is like how self-service this is. Like, hey, I want a database. I want it to be geo-distributable. I want it to work with my existing, perhaps SQL client or MongoDB or Cassandra. It's this easy. I just go in here, I search for Cosmos, I bring this up, and then very easily I can come in here, give us a name, ACDB instance, we'll call it that, and we'll throw this over in where were we throwing things in East US earlier, so we'll do that. And one of the nice things too here is if you want to get started with Cosmos DB today, there is a free tier, which is pretty awesome. This gives you 1,000 RUs and 25 gigs of storage for whatever you want to put into that database. And this is kind of cool. If you want to think about this from a dollar amount, that's $64 US that we offer for free if you want to kick the tires on this. I'm going to go ahead and set up just a prod instance here, and we'll go ahead and get that created. And again, one of the things to note from this is how much time have we spent so far? Maybe 2 minutes. We've got ourselves, near limitless cloud storage, and we've got ourselves near limitless geo-replicatable database that's cooking, if you will.
By the way, outside the scope of your talk there, but for free tier, that's great for when you got an Azure subscription. But if people go to developer.azurecosmosdb.com, we have a try Cosmos experience, which is completely free. No credit card at all. In fact, you don't even need an
jump right in, and you're using Cosmos.
Use your handy dandy Hotmail account or maybe a GitHub, something within the last century for email.
And you're there.
And you're there, right? So anyway,
so no excuse not to try this stuff out or kick the tires on it. And I'm curious too there, Mark, is that going to give you accessibility to any of the Synapse Link features in this free tier accounts?
Well, no. I mean, everything outside of Cosmos you'd still have to have. But you could match it up with, say, like a free web app. They have those guys have a free tier that's totally free as well. So you could pair it up that way. It's look at it. How do I put this? We're just really cool over here. All right. So we'll give you a free tier. You don't even need a subscription.
There you go. Hey, I just wanted to call attention to that, just in case anybody gets super excited.
Just in case people forgot how cool we are. We're pretty cool.
So I'm going to go ahead and set up our data factory next. And this is a tool. I just don't think this gets enough love. As you'll see, performs the ETL. If you folks are or ELT, the extract, transform, load, or extract, load, and transform operations for any operational data store in Azure. So if you want to go from one service to another, like your SQL, you say, hey, I'm tired of this, I want to go to Cosmos. You can do that. And this not only does that for you, but as you're going to see through some of the walkthrough here, it can even allow you to remap your schemas and things like that. It generates the ETL conversion for you and magically transforms your data from one data store to another. Just pretty awesome. The only thing I have to set up here is I'm not using a Git instance. I'm going to disable the Git configuration and go ahead and create this. And I think at this point in time, we should have a data store, a Cosmos DB instance, and a data factory. Now, what do we need to do first here? Probably get this COVID-19 case count data stored up in my storage account. This is the first thing I'm going to do. So I'm going to click into my storage account, come down here and set up a container, which is basically a place where this data can live. Not to be confused with OCI containers or anything like that. This is a storage container. We'll go ahead and call
container.
Or a Cosmos container. We'll create one of those as well.
That term's certainly not overloaded.
I'll go ahead. Actually, I'm going to give us a bit more generic name like data stores because you don't know what you're going to put in here. I'll go ahead and create that. And this is so simple to get started with. We just click here. And if I want to upload my data, oh, yikes.
Probably made it private.
It needs to live before. Oh, my. The request is not authorized to perform. I think it wants me to wait. Would you say that? It seems like my storage account's not alive. And that's okay if it's not, because
you're not using RBAC or anything. The only time I've seen something like that is when you provision something that has RBAC on it, and sometimes the RBAC rules don't replicate right away.
No, unfortunately, that is not the case here. And I'm wondering if this isn't just from going too fast. Let's go ahead and reload it.
How's that possible? Too fast. Too fast.
Perhaps I've created the container before it truly exists. Let's see. Wow, that is interesting. We might have a service here, but that's totally fine, because what I was going to showcase here, and we'll go ahead and pick up where we left off there, is demonstrating how with that existing Cosmos DB store and that the Cosmos and the data store, we can migrate the data from one place to the next. So what I'll do real quick, I'll actually pull up the one I used for the Data AI Hackathon. And if we jump into this container, you'll see it's very simple to get the data into here. Simply go through an upload process, and we can very easily select that CSV file that we pulled down from data.gov. Once we've pulled that in, we can bring that into my data sets. Voila, very simple. Now I've already done that. So if I jump into my container, you'll see here within my data sets tab, we can jump in and we see the CSV data loaded here. And what's sort of interesting, and I want you all to pay attention to this, especially as we go through the data factory part here, is that this is literally a CSV file. In fact, if I wanted to, I could edit that CSV file here, and you'll see it is stored in a very CSV style format, which I don't know about y'all. I like my data in JSON, and so does Cosmos DB.
Just be glad it's not in like XML or something like that.
And we could spelunk this. Not saying CSV data is not what runs the world in many different areas, but you can see this is how the data looks currently. And I want you to pay attention to this, because it's going to transform itself here in just a moment. So what we can do here is then we can jump into our data factory instance. And what I'm going to do is head on back to my dashboard, and we'll jump into our existing data factory. Or actually, we can use the one we just created, because I got a feeling I can pull data from the Data AI Hackathon store and throw that into my new Cosmos instance. So we'll go ahead and do that. So what we're going to first do is jump into the Data Factory Studio, which this ETL tool, I mean, it gives you this whole suite of options, and I like this. It makes it very easy to get started and use. In fact, when I was at the hackathon, I didn't have to read the documentation, because the tool itself was so, let's just say, user-friendly in terms of telling me exactly what I wanted to do. So you'll see, well, what do I want to do? Transform my data. I want to ingest data. I want to move data from one place to the next. So we can click here, and we're going to go ahead and choose a built-in copy task. I want to copy data from one place to the next. So from one data source to another. And from here, I'm going to choose my data source. Now, in this case, I know I'm going to be choosing from Azure Blob Storage, because that's where my CSV file was loaded. And then from here, we're going to generate a new connection. And they make this so easy, like so easy, Mark. I love this. I can simply come in here, choose my subscription. It will tell me all of the storage accounts that happen to be set up here. We know that this data is in the Data AI Hackathon store. And I like this too. I can just test the connection. It is securely set up that connection utilizing my Azure subscription. There was nothing crazy. I didn't have to go retrieve a key or anything like that. It literally just pulled it for me. So that sets up my source. Now, also, if I want to tell it how to copy my data, I can jump in here. You'll see inside of the datasets container, I can choose that CSV and I'm off to the races. We'll just select recursive copy here in case there was ever any additional data sets in there. Those would get pulled as well. And we can choose next. And as you might expect, at this point, it's going to give me a few options where I can sort of look at, well, how exactly is this file formatted? Is there special delimiters, etc.? That's cool. Gives me the option to do that. And also set that first row as a header, which is important because that's going to ultimately define the schema when this lands in Cosmos DB. And so next, our Cosmos DB is going to be our destination type. We did choose SQL API, so I'm going to make sure to choose that. And from here, we'll create a new connection. And again, I'm going to go through my Azure subscription, select the appropriate one, and we're going to go ahead and choose the ACDB instance. Now, there's something we did not do yet here. We did not create our container for that data instance, but that's totally fine. We're going to go back and set that up here in just a moment. So we'll go into our Cosmos DB instance. And just like what Mark was sort of hinting at here, we can go in here and add a container. And I'm going to go ahead and very quickly set up a place for this data to live. So we'll go ahead and give this a database ID, COVID-19 analysis. And then I'm going to go ahead and call the container case count, since that's what I'm going to eventually store here. And I know just from looking at this data earlier, there is an ID partition key that we can set up here to partition our data on. So that is just one of the fields that's available here in the CSV formatted data. And this is going to help me because when we create this and we map our data, it'll allow us to leverage that as our key value. So I've gone ahead, selected OK here. And now that I've done that, I can head back to our connection that we're trying to create here for the destination. And it should pick this up. There it is, COVID-19 analysis. That's it. Securely connected to the Cosmos data store. Very simple. And at this point, if I wanted to, now I'm going to just let this use the CSV header and map all columns as it does the ETL transformation. But you could come in here and actually map if you wanted to. You can map the schema yourself if you want. I'm going to just choose to skip the mapping here. Just something that, oh, yikes, it says this has not been properly configured. Well, then, let's see why that is. That should not be the case. Give me one moment here. So we've got this set up appropriately. Table mapping for case counts has not been selected appropriately. Well, why would that be, Mark? What am I doing wrong? Destination, connection, Cosmos DB. Please select a table. I think I know what the problem is. We need to go back here to our destination. And I believe, no, this is all correct. We test the connection here. Connection is successful. Yikes, this is a bit of a conundrum. So I should just be able to skip forward here. COVID-19 hospitalizations and counts. That's okay. How about we do this and you trust me that something that I configured wrong earlier is going to be limiting me from being able to proceed as planned. So we will go ahead, and the good thing is I've already got this set up. Let me head back to my my instance that we already performed this transformation on. And you should see that after we go through that ETL process from source to destination, I just don't want to spend too much time solving this problem here. You'll notice that that data gets transformed from the CSV format into a format that is capable of being seen within our Cosmos DB account. So I'll just jump right in here. And yikes, we should be able to see here in the Cosmos DB account, jump into my data explorer, and you'll see here's that transformed data set. If I click here on items, and I map this the same exact way using that ID field, you should see that now I have all of the COVID case count data, but those fields have been converted into a Cosmos capable format here. So now everything is a JSON document. This makes things very, very easy to continue forth with as we proceed. So my data has now been transformed. The next thing is, since we've got this data in Cosmos DB, we can now go through the process of enabling the Synapse Link feature. And this is going to allow me to basically go in and consume this in a visualization tool, for example, something like PowerBI. Now, setting this up, what I really like about this is really straightforward. The integrations for Synapse Link, they provide them kind of in two ways here. I can either click to just go to Azure Synapse Link and we can enable that on the Cosmos DB account, or I can just select the Power BI feature. Now, the good news is, since I am working with one where I've already migrated that data across using Azure Data Factory, is we don't have to wait for this to enable. But at the same time, I do want to talk about this a little bit more. When we talk about features for Synapse Link, it's not, again, just something that allows me to visualize or scan my data in real time. It can allow me to call into third-party services in Microsoft Azure and perform all sorts of different operations on those. So just something to think about here. When your data becomes stored in Cosmos, the Synapse Link can allow you to analyze it at cloud scale using features and functionalities that honestly can be mind-blowing if you're thinking about things that could be attached to a cloud scale database.
That's true. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, this the power there. Like I said, it's like a superpower when you plug that up to Cosmos. It's the stuff you can do is, I mean, where do I start?
Well, AI features for one.
Sure, right. I mean, start with what you're doing. I mean, that's what these people all did at this hackathon. Amazing.
And
stuff.
so, just what this would look like in order to go forth with this does require setting up a Synapse Workspace. So that is one of the steps that I've gone through and already completed here. Again, one that might take a little bit of time. But once you've created that Synapse Workspace, you basically have the power of Synapse to now perform any of those analysis operations on your data store. And what's really cool about this is at the end of the day, once you've enabled it, you can simply come over to the next step, which will allow you to download a Power BI ID file that is already ready to connect to this instance. So it already knows all the credentials to connect to my Synapse Link enabled Cosmos DB instance. And that's just straightforward. So what this looks like, if I pull down one of these Power BI PBIDS files, once you open this up, it basically has embedded in it all of the connection info. So if you have the Power BI desktop tool and you open one of these files up, it's going to know exactly what to do with it. So we'll go ahead and launch this PBIDS file that's generated as a result of that process. And we'll go ahead and try to plot the COVID-19 case curve.
Cool.
And we'll also learn a little bit about Power BI while we're going through this, which should be pretty fun for folks who haven't seen this yet.
Yeah, I'm playing. I don't I don't spend a lot of time in Power BI. But have been playing with it lately. I'm actually working with and talking to a couple of folks. They're CSAs, actually, and I had a CSA on the show not too long ago, just I think last week. And what I love about those guys is the stuff they do is coming directly from the work they do with customers, right? And so when they show you something, this is something that actually somebody's really running, and it's solving real problems, and they've worked out kind of how to make these things come together and how to make them work. And one of the things I was doing with these guys is they were showing how you could use a cool feature called incremental load or incremental something read or something out of Power BI. If you in case you had like a huge chunk of data, like a bunch of historical data you wanted to import, you would obviously do that once. But then unlike what you would have with maybe other reporting tools, every day you want to run a new report, you don't have to re-ingest all the data. You can just pick up whatever's new out of there. So that's the incremental piece of it there, which is cool because it's fast, right? Or faster than if you had to reload all the data from scratch. And I see you
You
got
want
your
like a
data
full
here
scan query, right, on the entire data
on the whole
store.
database, right? Yeah. So, if you can do it incrementally and Power BI can keep a checkpoint of that data, that's the coolest there.
When you get your data faster and at the same time,
Yeah.
like it's probably, I imagine that's a cost savings there too, if you're not
Oh
scanning
my.
the entire history.
Sure. Right. Because you're gonna cost RUs to query Cosmos. So if you don't have to do that as much, then yeah.
So what's interesting here is it's going to pull up that workspace, and it knows the data that's been stored in the Cosmos DB instance at this point. So I can go ahead and hit load. Now, what's really cool about this, because it's enabled with Synapse Link, this is a live connection to the database. So any of the data that appears here, similarly to what Mark was just mentioning, if we did want to reload or rescan for changes, we could perform that and actually get updated data here. Now, this is a historical data set, so basically what we have is what we have, but that is a feature that is also capable with the Synapse Link feature set. So this will take just a moment to load the data model. And what I love about this is all of those fields that you saw in Cosmos, like in the JSON document, actually are going to become fields that we can use for plotting or visualizing that data. And so the easiest thing to do here, like if you want to find correlations in COVID-19 data, as we sort of mentioned earlier, the easiest thing to do is if you can find something that has a timestamp in it, as well as values of data, so in our case, the actual case count, we could start to plot that curve over time. And I think most people are probably familiar with this. You probably have seen this in the news if you were keeping up with the COVID-19 pandemic. There were two large spikes that kind of both occurred during the holiday periods, right? So you have a nice way to sort of tell that you're on the right track, because you should be getting that result when you plot your data. Now, what I'm going to do here first is if I select just the field of interest here, which is date of interest, it's going to go ahead and automatically apply that to the x-axis. But what you'll notice here is the way my data is being interpreted right now, and this is kind of a cool thing, actually. It thinks that it's text because it pulled it from Cosmos DB, and there is nothing that's really telling this that, hey, this is a different data type.
There's no datetime in JSON, right? So it's text. Yeah.
So yeah, it has no idea. But what I love about Power BI is Power BI can be like, whoa. You want this to be a date time? Yes, I want it to be a date time. Cool. Let me change that for you. All right. And I'm going to just automatically format this thing for you. Okay, fun. So you already know the format, and and as you know, CSV files and timestamps, it's rare that you ever get just a normal UTC timestamp. It's always something. It'll figure it out for you. And so at this point, we've got the date plotted. And now what I can go ahead and do is take my case count. We'll go ahead and add that to the y-axis. And I bet you can guess here, there's probably a problem with this one as well. It thinks everything is text. And I know just from looking at the CSV data here that this case count is actually a whole number. So we can go ahead and select whole number here and change that as needed. And now that I've done that, I should have an x-axis that's going to be my date of interest and a y-axis that's going to be my COVID case count. And as soon as that is updated with the proper format, then I'm going to go ahead and get the proper graph, and you're going to see those spikes that essentially we discussed earlier. So the big one, of course, being that 2022 spike. This is when a lot of testing was going on, a lot of various different things were causing it to proliferate a little bit more than usual. There were certain events. But if you see this graph, you're now at that point where you're able to start analyzing this data against something else. So I got a question for you, Mark. What do you think we thought of? We were in New York City, and we were thinking, well, we should plot this against something. We wanted a really rich data set. What do you think we went with?
Sales of dirty dogs on Manhattan streets.
That's a good one. We should have done that. We totally should have done that. Actually, we went a little bit more robust with, I ended up choosing the NYPD complaint data. So this is what anytime a complaint.
That's actually the same. That's the same thing, actually. Oh. They're highly correlated.
To hot dog sales.
I had a street vendor smack me upside the head with a dirty hot dog. I'm going to file a complaint. So there you go.
Now, as you're aware, we could go about this a couple of ways. You could just bring this. What I like about Power BI actually is like if you've got a data set that's in the cloud, you can bring a local CSV file into there as well if you want. You could also go through the same process that we did, or that I attempted to show, where we would go through, throw it into storage or something like that, ETL it into Cosmos DB, and then it would become available in our Synapse Link. Just with a simple refresh, that data source would then become available. So what I did with plotting that data, you can see here, I actually had to use two data sets. The reason why is they report this annually. So there was two data sets. One is the data set to year to date, which you'll see here. And the other one is the historical to year to date. And then there's the from year to date to current that are plotted alongside each other. And it's not a rigorous analysis here, but if you look at those two data sets, you can sort of start to draw a bit of a conclusion here. More COVID-19 cases, less crime, or less complaints, I should say. It doesn't necessarily mean there's less crime. And what we also notice here is the distribution. Apparently, larceny is the most common complaint in New York City. That stayed the same here. But the point here isn't what we found. It's that if you go through this workflow that we've shown, and once you get to that point where you've plotted the historical curve of COVID-19 data, you're then off to the races. And not only that, if you've gone through this workflow, you now know how to do this in a way where you can leverage operational data services at scale in the Microsoft Azure cloud, and then bring in a powerful visualization tool like Power BI. And at this point, perform all sorts of analysis based on the available visualizations and tools contained herein.
There's interesting things when I look at this data. Like if I go back to almost the very beginning of that graph there, that looks like it probably coincides with when lockdowns happened within kind of the greater Manhattan, or at least New York State area. So I would see obviously complaints go down there, and of course a big spike. That's probably about March, I guess, that year, 2020.
Outside, I think,
and then lots of complaints. These are probably people just going crazy from cabin fever after a couple of months. So all going nuts, and it's near summertime. So okay, that makes sense. And then kind of does this thing, and then ticking up again, more people getting angry and crazy, so more complaints going up, and then just kind of tailing off again. So I could just sensing, just knowing kind of New York.
Yeah, it's possible at this point everybody was just sick. You know, I don't know, but it's fun to look at this kind of thing. And like I said, you could look at anything. You could look at hot dog sale data if you wanted to, and draw your own conclusions.
Yeah. Could be. You never know, right? You never know what data set is going to correlate with what you're seeing there. So the more you know. But why is there? So you got blue line for complaints and then orange line for complaints. Why are they
two data sets? Is the reason why. So one is the I guess it's the data set that's all complaints up to, and then the other one is from current year onward.
Okay, got it.
So I had to sort of stitch them together because there wasn't one at the time that crossed all the way into 2022.
That makes sense. Okay.
But yeah, this was a fun exercise, and like whenever I know for me, once I saw this was new to me, Mark. So like I had never graphed data from a Cosmos DB store, but when I realized, well, there's got to be a way to do it. The whole trick there, and I think the thing that opened up my eyes at this point was going through all of the tools that we had leveraged to make this happen. So again, that was Cosmos DB, pulling data, the ETL from blob storage using Data Factory, the Synapse Link and Power BI. When I learned that workflow, that's what started to make me think, okay, I'm really, really starting to get this now. Like this is definitely a powerhouse set of tools that you can combine to create something useful. Now, the thing I would definitely invite any of the viewers today, if you like what you saw here, or you want to repeat this, or you want to perform your own analysis, again, we did call this out at the beginning. If you are to head to that aka.ms/Azure Data Workshop link, that will bring you to this article that's going to allow you to follow through the same steps. And I promise you, they're written in a way where if you follow them, they will work 100%. And you can start to perform your own analysis today. But that's not all. If you did want to go through these steps and maybe start to compete in an actual hackathon, sort of like the one that we did in New York, we're actually opening up an invite for an event coming soon in November for another data AI hackathon, except this time we plan to run this entirely virtually. Now, the good news here, you've got a head start, because as part of the rules, we do want to see folks leveraging data that's stored somewhere in Azure, that's then visualized using some sort of tool and analyzed using an analysis service. So we're really calling on folks to come up with creative solutions here. And of course, since we're on the Azure Cosmos DB live stream, we'd like to see you leverage this workflow, or maybe one that you can generate that's similar to this that we haven't thought of. Perhaps pulling in data from Cosmos DB into something like Databricks, maybe visualizing with your live notebook support. There's a lot of really cool things that you could do from here.
I can even do you one better there for you or the viewers here that want to participate is here's a good resource for a bunch of data sets that I frequently use when I need to ingest something and I can't use like bogus or whatever to generate fake data sets. This link here has got basically it's kind of like a hub, and it links to a ton of data sets that are all available out there publicly. So people want to go and participate at this thing, either in person or virtually. You got a virtual option for this thing, right? Yeah, so they can go and take a look at the data sets that are available within here. Or, I mean, Google's your friend as well. I know you can find data sets pretty much anywhere, covering nearly anything. Governments are great resources for data sets. As you're aware, obviously, New York City and state of New York for the COVID data, and then, of course, New York City for complaint data and dirty dog sales, all that stuff. You can get... If there's someone counting it, someone's recording that data somewhere, and once you got it, you can do anything you want with it, right? So,
I'd like to see Netflix views compared over time throughout the COVID period. That would be an interesting one. I don't know, clearly people had to have been watching more Netflix than ever before. I don't know. There's a data set for it.
I'm sure there is. I wouldn't surprise you if someone did that. Other ones that we know exist, like Peloton sales, COVID, and then what they did after COVID. I think we all seen that data set, at least the results of it. Yeah.
So I do just want to mention there's a slight modification here. The problem statement we're looking at this time is exploring the whole work from home concept. So looking at some facet of that, right? Like, were people working more? Were people, obviously they were commuting less, but like, what were some of the impacts that we can take from this that we could adapt to understanding how the work environment has changed? And I can promise you, to start answering this question, having this workflow where you start with getting the COVID-19 time series data plotted is going to be step number one. The next thing, though, becomes, what is the aspect of work from home that would be most important to look at? And it's interesting. I mean, here, you could look at things like GitHub check-ins, right? Like, were people writing more code during lockdown? We're I don't know, plug into the Office graph at your enterprise and see, like, again, were people working longer hours? I know over here, some of that was certainly experienced at the beginning of the pandemic. And there might be some really interesting takeaways from how this has expanded over time. So
just off the top of my head, things that I think would be related to that, where you would have likely government public accessible data sets, would be commuting data. So that could be accident rates. That could be bus fares or bus ticket sales, any kind of commuter thing that's run by some kind of city, state, whatever, municipal, county. Sounds like that would be something you could track that's kind of related to work from home. You talked about Netflix. I guess anything that is purchased or done that is somehow captured, fuzzy slipper sales over that period of time, I guess, or maybe a commensurate drop in shoes or pants, or I don't know, whatever. I guess that change people's patterns and what they do different as a result of just not having to go into an office anymore.
I'm curious, are we getting any? There's got to be some interesting suggestions coming out of the chat if folks want to try.
Not really. I've not seen any. Nope, none yet. But hey, folks, come on, make some suggestions. add to the thoughts or the ideas that we've got here. This is great. I love. This is another cool kind of idea, right? Like this work from home thing. I'm sure there's lots of cool questions you could ask and answer with publicly available data sets. And as you've shown, the tools to do this stuff are really easy. I mean, ingesting data into Blob Store and then using ADF to basically move that data into Cosmos. I mean, you could literally move it into anything and then plug it into Synapse, turn on Cog services, and start doing analysis on all this stuff. This is, and then use Power BI. Of course, you want to visualize all that stuff as well. So,
absolutely, and that's as you mentioned with Synapse Link, I would just love to see, depending on the data you're looking at, of course, like there's literally stuff in here. It'll detect the anomalies for you in your data. So it'll find those interesting parts where there's some sort of a transition. There might even be something subtle that you don't necessarily notice in a graph. And then just any of this sort of stuff that you're looking at here, I think would be very interesting to see this leveraged in a hackathon like this. So if folks have ideas, feel free to shoot those over. We're going to be running office hours during the event. So if people need help while they're using the tools, we'll have folks on hand. I believe Jay Gordon's actually going to be helping us out here as well. So we're definitely just calling on all attendees that want to be a part of this to start understanding some of these work from home sort of affects that have occurred as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah, this is cool. There's lots of data, right? So lots of things you could analyze with that. And like you were saying earlier, you can mix other data sets on top of this stuff and then really come up with interesting insights. So great stuff.
Yeah. Cool,
man.
So if we have any questions or anything like that from the audience, happy to start taking some of those as we sort of near the end here.
No questions. Just Jay says hi. Hi, Paul. Hi, Mark. Hi, Jay. How are you? And then Anon here says
yo
or yo. I guess that's yo. Sorry. Another hi there. So just people being friendly, but no questions from them. But I think for sure this is a really compelling, fun thing to do. Like I said, I love the format. Just being a hackathon, like there's nothing preset here. Just kind of put some guardrails around it and go at it and see what you come up with. I like, gives you the freedom and creativity to really see what you can do. So all good. Right on. Well, thank you, Paul. Great having you with us this week. I'd love to have you back. Just for viewers at home, like Paul's team is all about kind of data and AI. So we talk regularly and are sharing kind of things going on between our teams. And these guys are always doing cool, interesting stuff. So I'm sure Paul will have you back on, or you and folks from your team, and just more cool stuff to share. In fact, just everybody over in that cloud developer advocate team, everybody over there does really cool, fun stuff. It's just, even today there was a guy over there. It's like, hey, I created this really cool thing for serverless. Was it serverless week, serverless month, serverless quarter?
Serverless September, Mark.
Serverless September. That's it. I knew there was a time component to it. I couldn't remember if it was a week, a month, a year. I don't know. It's a month. Okay, September. But anyway, just cool stuff like that. You guys are, it's like a fun, kind of fun, if you will, I guess. I don't know. I know it's real work.
We get to work with some of the coolest data products across, really in the world. And it's also a pleasure for us to regularly meet with the Cosmos DB team. And we always know things oftentimes before they're coming, get to try kicking the tires on features before they come out. So if you always want to stay plugged in, would definitely suggest, following myself, anyone that's on my team, I'd be happy to connect you. And also Mark and Jay. These are the folks that are really driving the product development over there. So certainly would suggest, if you want to stay up to date with Cosmos DB, tune into the live show, and also make sure to follow some of the talking heads here on LinkedIn or Twitter, wherever it happens to be. We'd love to answer your questions as they come up.
Yeah, I'll put us back in side by side so people can see PJ DeCarlo on Twitter there. So definitely, like I said, always cool stuff coming out of you guys. And thank you so much for just coming on and sharing. Very fun, cool stuff, man. I love it. I love it. So, all right, folks, that's it for this week. Just some quick announcements. Hey, we have a monthly Cosmos DB user group with monthly meetups organized every month. New guests, new cool stuff to show. Come check us out. You can check out our meetup page and just click the link there. Sign up and then get notified when our next meetup is coming there. We are episode 60. I can't believe I've done 60 of these episodes, 60 of these shows. We've got 59 others, so come check out. You can, just like you probably watch Netflix for COVID, maybe there's some other pandemic comes along, you can binge watch us and check out all other 59 episodes of live Cosmos DB TV. So come join us there, aka MS Cosmos DB Live TV. And you can enjoy, put on your fuzzy slippers, and you can watch us for 59, 60 hours of uninterrupted TV. So anyway, that's it, Paul. Thank you so much for joining us this week. And next week, folks, we're going to talk about a new feature coming out, container copy or intra-account container copy. So I know folks that follow me on Twitter or otherwise talk to me say, hey, I wish there was an easy way to be able to copy data from, say, one container or one thing over to another in Cosmos. Well, hey, we've been listening to you and we're working on it. And next week, we'll show you what we've got and hopefully take some feedback and some questions for you on it too. So anyway, that's it for this week. Paul, thank you so much, sir. We'll hope to see you again. And thank you, everybody. Take care. We'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.
Cheers.